Support for authentic parenting comes from listeners like you. Since 2015, we've been fully listener supported, and we rely on your donations to keep bringing you expert insights and valuable content every week. To see suggested donation amounts and help us continue our mission, visit authenticparenting.com/support or join us on Patreon at patreon.com/authenticparenting. Every contribution makes a difference. Thank you for your support. I am Anna Seewald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about growing ourselves while raising our children. I'm a psychologist, educator, and parent coach, and on this podcast, I explore how you can connect to your authentic self, practice radical self-care, and raise emotionally healthy children. Let's break the cycle of generational trauma for a more peaceful, kind, and compassionate world. Today, stop people-pleasing, how to value yourself and your needs. Are you a people pleaser? Do you often put your own needs aside to make others happy? Do you find yourself in the role of the helper, feeling underappreciated or taken advantage of? If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Join us as we explore the complexities of people-pleasing and how to reclaim your voice, meet your needs, and stop that tendency once and for all. I am speaking with a fellow podcaster, Amy Wilson. She's the author of the memoir, When Did I Get Like This? And her latest book, Happy to Help. Since 2016, she has also been the co-host of the What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood podcast. Amy is also an actor who appeared on Broadway and as a series regular on TV sitcoms. She lives with her family in New York City. I enjoyed connecting with Amy and my conversation with her, and I hope you'll find it helpful. Please enjoy, and thank you for listening. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to meet you via Zoom in person like this for the first time. I know you, I know your podcast, and I believe we have a common person. It's our editor. He edits your show. He edits my show.
Oh, how about that? Yeah, small world.
A small world. Yeah. So this topic of helping our children or not helping them, where is the line? How much shall we do? How much shall we let them figure things out on their own? Where to step in? It's a hard one. And I think everybody battles with that. So, and it seems like you figured out some stuff for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the hard part is that parents are told that they're doing it wrong. And I believe mothers in particular are told that they're doing it wrong no matter what they do, sometimes both at the same time, like the paradox of you're both totally hovering over your kids and not letting them breathe and completely absorbed in your phone all the time, you know, a self-absorbed person, and your kids aren't getting you. Like, how can we tell a mother that she's doing both of those things at the same time? And yet we do. And so, you know, over and over again through my years raising my kids, which I think about a lot because I have a parenting podcast and also because I'm a parent and I do think about these things, I was constantly faced with these challenges of helping my kids, as in advocating for my kids, or sometimes are helping them through tough times, or helping them figure out who they want to be, helping them get into college, helping, and wanting to help and feeling like what I was doing wasn't enough. And then also getting back from society that the reason this was hard is like, you, mom, you won't let go, mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be, mom, which I think is unfair and untrue. But you do take that on. Another part of it that's hard is that when our children go through hard times, we really do empathically take that on as if it's our own. And it can be very hard to let our kids suffer even if we can intellectually understand that's how they develop resilience and that's how they grow into adults. It can be hard to let that happen.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. Let's start with that one and go a little deep into letting our children suffer and seeing them suffer because it's hard on multiple levels. Number one, you hate to see them suffer because as a parent, you want to jump in and help and rescue and do something about it, right? And then, of course, it's going to make you feel better as a parent in that moment. But how is this serving your child? Then number two, there is this level of suffering, right? You want your children to suffer, but how much suffering, when is your time to enter, right? Because you don't want to be hands off completely. It can go wrong both ways, right? If you interfere too soon, too fast, and or the opposite.
Exactly. I think the point is that you probably won't calibrate it perfectly and get it exactly right. You probably will jump in a little too often or wait a little too long or both. And there are times in the book that I talk about that I definitely did both of those things, that I went too far and pushed too hard, and when I didn't ask enough questions and I didn't go far enough. And you can't necessarily see ahead of time. You can only see in the rearview mirror what you might have done differently. And I think the hard part is to have self-compassion, as Kristen Neff would say, about those moments and not beat ourselves up for not having done it perfectly right. Because I think it's true that when our children are suffering, and suffering is sort of a broad thing we should probably talk about more specifically, when our children are going through tough times, I don't think they're sitting there in their room crying about their breakup, thinking, why won't my mom fix this for me? Why won't, right, my parent magically take away my suffering? That's not an expectation they have of us. And yet we can have it for ourselves.
Yeah, and oftentimes I think when we see our children go through tough times, suffer, or face challenges, it can bring up issues from our own past, right? When we were kids and our parents perhaps didn't attend to us and we were left with our own pain. We don't know how to manage, navigate. So we learned to, have issues around this kind of times. And that also can impact how we interfere in the moment or not, perhaps, right? I've heard stories that sometimes people, it's so painful for them. Sometimes they want to jump in and help so that it can end, so that they won't feel uncomfortable. There's no tough moments. And sometimes they don't know what to do. So they are overwhelmed by their own feelings.
Yes, and you're right. The like middle school being an example of that, when our own children are in middle school, particularly our daughters, if they have relational aggression. I had plenty of that in my own adolescence, and I talk about it in the book. And then it is hard when your kids are at that stage when relational aggression, which is, the fancy word for the ostracization and bullying and mean girl and mean boy stuff that can come up, to not meet it with your middle school self, right? And meet it with your parental self and offer them compassion, but also the perspective of this will be okay and I believe in you, instead of I'm going to march down to that school right now and go mama bear on children or teachers or whatever it is. But the sort of the drums can be beating in our own heart of like, this isn't fair, this is terrible. And you're right, it is the echoes of our own childhood experiences coming back in those moments.
Yeah. Have you had those kinds of experiences? You're right that you had. And what's helpful, do you think, for someone in that moment? A question, a pause, what would be helping, something helpful that you can discern? No, this is my stuff. This is the echoes from the past.
Lisa D'Amour, who is an adolescent psychologist who I think she's great, she said something when she was on our show that has become a touchstone for me, which is when my adolescents are going through something tough, relational, whatever it is. You lead with empathy. That sounds tough. And then you say, do you think you can handle this? How are you going to handle this? Do you need help with this? Do you think you need help with this? And that is a very open way to let them ask for the help that they might need from you without assuming that they need the help from you, that they need mommy to fix everything. And so I've used that and I have found it very useful. Although I will say, I won't get into details, but one of my kids had a situation at school with a peer that got really intense. And I was applying the, do you think you need help? Do you think you can handle this kind of thing? And there came a point where the kid couldn't handle it. And my spouse and I did have to step in and talk to the other parents of the other kids that were involved. It got out of control. And and then I thought, geez, did I do that wrong? Did I over apply the, I believe in you, you can handle it? Should I have stepped in sooner? But again, I'm not sure, could have calibrated that perfectly correctly. And a situation that ends with, the situation ended peacefully. It's not still a problem. There aren't ramifications now. So therefore, I guess we did do it as well as we could. And my kid handled it as well as they could. And it's not something to spend a lot of time in retrospect thinking, well, should I have stepped in at on day 48 instead of day 51? It's silly, and yet we do that because we love our kids.
Yeah, it's a great question. You're right. Do you think you can handle it? It sounds like most regular, ordinary problems. That's a good question to ask. And I would think that would be very useful. But you're right. So there comes a moment where the child's challenge or the problem, if they might think that they can handle it, but they can handle it poorly. This is the way they're
That's
handling.
true.
Because
Right.
if I ask you, Aim, can you handle this? You're like, yeah, because in your mind, you are handling it, whether it's effective
Right.
or not.
But you're a child. Right.
But
Good
you're a
point.
child, like, how do you measure if you're handling? So I know, like, giving autonomy and all of this is good. And there is good application for this question. I would go down a level. I always ask this question for me as a parent, and I teach this to other parents. Who has the problem? Is this my problem or is this my child's problem? And I feel like this is a good discerning question. If you come with that question first, then if the problem falls under the category, this is my child's problem, then I think that question, do you think you can handle it, works perfectly fine. But if it's bullying, or some kind of thing like that, that already is not your child's problem for them to solve on their own. I think that requires for the parents active participation, right? If your child comes and says, oh, I missed an assignment and Mrs. Such and such gave me a poor grade, that's their problem. That is not, you can be a passive facilitator of the process and listen with empathy, ask questions, and help your child to find a solution to that problem. And ask the question, do you know how to handle this? Do you need help? I think that will work with that. Or even relational issues, right? It depends again on the level. So this is why I think as a parent, it's hard to know what problem is that problem for us to step into. But I think if it's just, I don't know how to even categorize this. If it's like day to day ordinary problems, missed homework, or, some quarrels between friends and things of this nature, then it's your child's territory. Then you can help them by listening and being there for them and supporting them while they're going through this. And I will add that we had an issue this year and without giving obviously names and details, my daughter had in a sporting team, she had an issue. In the beginning, I was trying to discern, is this her issue or we need to step in? And like you, we didn't step in for a while. But then when I heard more stories and more things and from other people, it rang a bell. And I told my husband, I said, this is no longer, they can't handle this. Adults need to step in. And we did. And the issue got resolved. So it's tricky. Sometimes it's your kids' problems, they can solve it. Sometimes you let them be with the problem and handle it to a certain degree, then you interfere, right? There's no right or wrong. I think that's
Sometimes, too, with older kids, you can encourage them to go to their advisor at school, their teacher, their dean, their coach, and say, I have this problem and I don't know what to do. And it can feel sometimes like you're both for you and for your kid that they can't have that conversation without the solution. Like I have to come up with the problem and the solution. Like these kids are being mean to me, so you have to let me sit next to you on the bus, whatever. And what I've been trying to encourage my kids to do is you can go to the trusted adults in your life who don't have to be me with, I have this situation going on and I don't know what to do about it. That's enough to go to a trusted adult with instead of, and so I thought this would be the solution. What do you think? And will you sign this form for me? You can go with more open-ended questions to the adults you trust. And then to be that adult on the other side, especially as the parent, leaving things open-ended feels insufficient, right? It feels like we're not protecting our baby birds like we're supposed to, but living in the uncertain, maybe sometimes unfixable, open-ended, hard stuff is life. And I think it's okay to sit with our kids in those problems and hear them tell us about the things they're struggling with without our solving them. That's enough, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Yeah, that in and of itself is the help, that it's a very helpful act. I think many of us diminish the value of being present, holding space, and listening. I think we place so much more value on solving the problem, having an outcome, some kind of result, right? As opposed to no, your help is more valuable when you are present, you listen, you hold space, and you just let your child think through this on her or his own, and you're just there. Like, that's enormous. That's, most of us need that, and not a lot of us get that, right?
That's right. That's right. And if we were in a situation where we had a friend or a partner who, patted us on the side, like, well, you just need to do this. You just need to go tell that person you're not going to, like, and we're annoyed, right? When we get that from another adult in our lives. And certainly our kids can be annoyed when we provide solutions that they think are pat. I mean, when one of my kids is dealing with a problem, it can be a small problem. I don't know what to get dad for his birthday. I can give you 10 solutions and I'll get 10 answers why that's a bad answer and that can't be the answer. I don't know what to do tonight with my friends. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Well, that's like bad idea and that's a bad idea. They're going to reject every idea I have anyway. But they're not really expecting, our kids are not expecting us to fix everything. Or if they are, they can learn to exist in the middle space where things aren't so clear and not feel this panicked need to get out of there back into certainty at all costs.
Yes, well, my daughter does that sometimes with me too. What her dilemma is always, what should we eat or what should we cook? She loves cooking, eating, and so that's always a problem. And I can suggest a million
Right.
ideas. They will all be denied and
Right.
rejected.
All bad ideas.
But sometimes that's what helps them come up with their own clearly. So I used to get annoyed by questions like this. Now I see that as a tool for them to get clear on what they really. I have adults friends like that. Shall I get this or this? Shall I get, if you tell them this, they're going to go with the opposite.
Sounds familiar.
Another helpful thing I've heard, and I use it, and we use it in our authentic parenting support group, is the three H's, right? Do you need a hug? Do you need help? Or do you need to be heard? So you can ask someone, and most often people need to be heard, or they need a hug, or they need both, or they need advice, they need help, right? But I think that when we assume that somebody needs help, it's so undermining for them, right? Have you experienced that when someone offers you unwanted help? You feel less capable. It triggers me, for example. I don't know how you experience that when someone assumes that you need some kind of help or advice and they offer it to you. How do you feel?
I mean, I have to confess, I'm probably more on the other side of that, which is why I wrote this book. I have been a helper and I have very much taken on this idea that I need to help other people. And that it's Anne Lamott calls it the sickness of fixing other people's problems, that you can sometimes step into roles that weren't exactly asked. I know how to solve this. It's so easy for me to see what you need to do. It is easy for us to solve other people's problems sometimes when it's just that no good boyfriend is back again. Let me tell you, you need to lose him. Yeah, you can over apply your helpfulness. And I think that I have in the past gotten stuck by thinking like the happiness of my loved ones, the ones closest to me, was mine to achieve and ensure, which it wasn't, even if the world sometimes says it was. And when you're a parent, it kind of tells you that it is. that you have to put their wants and needs first. And then when they're happy, then you will have been a good parent. And when they're not, then you won't. So I had to sort of unlearn that. And then I also had to unlearn the idea that when somebody is unhappy, that they're looking to me to fix it so they can be happy again, whether it's my kid or my brother or my spouse or whoever it is. People aren't asking you for that. And so, you can rest before. When I'm unhappy, I don't expect the world because I have to fix it myself. And yet I think I did think that I had to fix these situations of people around me in order for them to see that I loved them by helping them. So I was probably one of those people who would annoy you by over delivering where it hadn't exactly even been asked for.
Yeah, I mean, based on my own wounding, I am more self-reliant. I am also a helper and a giver and reacher and all of those things. So when people offer help or things like that, I'm like, I can do it myself. Like I feel like undermined. But you said a couple of good things, and I want to like linger a little bit on those points. Making our kids happy. I think a lot of parents think that's their job, right? Even if you say, hey, what do you want for your kids? I want them to be healthy and happy. This is like every parent says that. But yeah, and you named something needs, which I also want to highlight. So, meeting our children's needs doesn't mean we're going to make them happy. We're going to meet their needs as a parent and protect them, but does not necessarily lead to happiness. And happiness, I feel like, should not even be in our radar. Like, that's not a goal. Our goal is to protect our children, nurture, care for them, support them, and all of those things, guide them, but not make them happy. If you focus on making them happy, then that's a very, very tricky territory. First of all, you're going to be unhappy and frustrated and resentful all the time. And that's not our main goal. But meeting their needs, emotional and physical needs, is our priority. And when I meet your needs sometimes, my dear child, that may make you unhappy,
Yes.
perhaps.
Right. It is time for bed. I'm meeting your needs by making sure you go to bed now.
Right. So I
Point.
think it's okay to lift that off of, tell to parents, you don't need to make your children happy. Don't even focus on that. That again ties into our own wounds, right? Our own emotional stuff probably trickles in. Maybe we weren't seen or heard or validated when we were kids, and now we feel like making them happy, that's what it means. And I think having our priorities straight, like what you said, we want our children to be more resilient, right? Who is this serving? If you're helping your kid, is this serving you, your self esteem as a parent, that you're a good parent, that you did something about this, that you are a proactive parent? And you took away something from your kid because you didn't let them fail and grow and learn and become resilient at the end.
Right. And that's how they grow, the failures and the resiliency. I mean, I have learned that after many years of, reading parenting books and interviewing experts. I believe that to be true, that failures are how our children learn, disappointments are how they develop resiliency. And then I have to apply those same things to myself, right? Not getting everything perfectly right all the time when I parent my
Yes.
kids is how I will learn to be a better parent.
Yes, and being responsible for other people's feelings, including our children. Oh my gosh. I mean, you're talking about boundaries, emotional boundaries. Like maybe we didn't learn when we were kids. The adults in our lives, they did not establish healthy boundaries. This is you, your emotions. This is me, my emotions. When they are angry at something, they just reacted at us. So we learned to be the peacemaker in the home. We became responsible for other people's feelings because we didn't want to feel a certain way in that type of household. It was violent and turbulent. People adapt to situations early on and they take on roles like you took on the helper's role.
Yes. I mean, in my case, literally because I was the oldest of six kids in my home, and my mom was the oldest of eight kids. So I come from a long line of big families and, women who help. And I was So from the time I was in second grade, I was changing diapers. I was, feeding younger siblings baby food. By the time I was 11 or 12, I was giving my sisters a bath. And I enjoy doing all of that. I don't look back on that and seethe with resentment. I look back on that as, wow, that was a happy childhood. And I loved doing all those things. And I adored all my younger brothers and sisters. But I did put in me this idea that I am a good helper. I'm good at it and I'm happy while I'm doing it, which is part of being good at it. And I don't make it seem hard. That's the other thing. I don't complain about it and I don't act like it's hard. That's the other part of being a good helper. And so I think I learned all those things in my home, watching my mother raise six of us without help and doing all the cooking and cleaning herself and not making a fuss about it, as she would say. So I learned that that was a good way to be. And it is a good way to be if you're one of the people that's being taken care of. It's pretty awesome to have a mom who always smiles and never gives you a hard time. But it definitely taught me that that was the way I had to behave. And I think I over applied it to some of the situations in my life as a grown up. For sure. I think writing this book, for sure, just the actual act of writing a book about having too much to do and trying to redistribute the workloads that have become unbalanced over time. Writing a book about that meant redistributing my workloads that had become unbalanced over time, so I had time to write a book. So it was very meta what I was doing, but I definitely did with my spouse, with my kids, redistribute. And that's sort of, I don't want to be the only one who does things. I also don't want to be the only one who notices that things need to be done. And when the first response back is like, well, you're just better at that. I went and did the research, and that's not true. Women's brains are not better at noticing mess. They are not better at multitasking than men's. It's a bill of goods we've been sold. And so I was able to take that back to my family, like, that's actually not true. When I have to do 10 things at once, it's as distracting and stressful as it would be for you. I'm not any better at it. I have more experience at it, and I'd like to readdress things. And asking again and again, it worked slowly, I must say. And now I have a household with people who do notice when we're out of dog food, or who do notice when the recycling needs to be taken downstairs. And these things happen, but they don't happen overnight.
Do you have a hard time receiving help?
I think I do. But honestly, I think that is too often put back on women. This is sort of the central thesis of Happy to Help, that when women like me who do a lot for other people, who overachieve, maybe finally say they're overwhelmed and ask for help, what we are given back usually is some form of advice around this being a choice of our own, that we don't let people help us, that we make things harder than they need to be, that it's our perfectionism at work, that it's our workaholism at work, instead of, sexism at work, instead of society at work expecting too much of women. And when women take on when we ask for help and get back advice to fix ourselves, then we go do it. We go try to fix ourselves. We're like, oh, that's right, I am a bad person, and I do need to start letting other people help me. And then I think waste another 3 to 6 months reading a book and trying to change who we are instead of trying to change the situation we exist within. And so I've been around long enough to watch this advice given to women change and warp and weave from one thing to another. And I love an assignment. So I read all the books and I tried all the methods. And it wasn't about making myself more perfect first. It was about changing situations that didn't work.
Oh, that's good. Are you looking for personalized support on your parenting journey? I offer one-on-one coaching tailored to your needs, including court-ordered parenting classes and co-parenting counseling. These services are available to anyone, no matter where you live, whether in the United States or abroad. As a special thank you to my listeners, you can enjoy 10% off all coaching packages. Visit authenticparenting.com to learn more about my services and how we can work together to achieve your parenting goals. Say that again. I think that's so, that's powerful.
Yeah, that's it. When we struggle, when we're in hard seasons of life, sometimes they're hard because they're hard, not because there's something wrong with you. And I think too often women are given back that you're a control freak. You maternal gatekeep, you do all this stuff. And we take that in like, you're right, I'm a type A personality. That's what's wrong with me. Instead of, I don't want to do all this myself anymore. And I need to redistribute this. It's much more practical, the solution sometimes, than what we're offered in response. And we take it on.
I mean, I still struggle with this balance, obviously, doing more for people. And obviously, I've also learned, like being a helper, like I'm very capable, resourceful. I don't rely on people. I can get things done on my own, faster, better, more efficient. Why should I even rely on you? I'll get it done better. It's a hard lesson to unlearn because then you have to put up with other people's incompetencies, inefficiencies, and things of this nature, which drives me insane. I was in a committee and none of the people were doing their part. So I ended up doing everyone's part and perfectly and delivering. And then I resigned at the end because I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. But sometimes, yes, of course, you can step back, let other people do some of the things and delegate. But I think there comes that point where you need to, sit with that. Oh, they didn't do it exactly the way I did it, or this is inefficient, or they didn't do it on a timely manner, or they forgot to do it. There are those other things that you need to deal with. And sometimes just because of that, I overstretch myself not to feel that and put up with people and train people or things of that nature. Their inefficiencies. The biggest pet peeve of mine, I would say, is incompetence. When someone shows some kind of incompetence that I can get it done faster, it's just like, come on. I get really impatient with that. And I learned to discern and not to step in and rescue and save and do it more and more now at this age, but it's still internally very hard. And I've talked about on the podcast how I give, how I help, is I ask discerning questions for myself. Am I doing this out of the goodness and kindness of my heart? Or am I doing this from my old pattern? If it's from that wanting to help, and then I stop. I don't want to do, I can, but I don't. But if I have resources and I am doing it from kindness, then I do the act because I'm a helper. I'll always be a helper. I can't change that. But what I can do now is not to dispense and just be everywhere and do everything and be a Mother Teresa. No one is going to value that.
No, that's the point. They don't. The line between being a good helper and being taken advantage of is thin. And if you're the selfless Mother Teresa, I'll do it all myself. I'll take it on. Everybody else will be like, awesome. That's like great. They'll only give you more to do. The more you're good at, the more you will get to do. You're hoping that you will be so good and so helpful. That's how you're going to earn help yourself, by being seen as so good at being helpful. Like, my God, look what she's managing. I'm going to take that one thing from you. That has never happened for me. It's never going to happen. You have to ask for the help you need or start refusing things because nobody's going to do it for you. That's the sad truth.
No one gives you a medal or recognition, or even no one even notices sometimes.
They don't even notice.
They don't even notice, unfortunately.
Yeah, I said that in the book, that being, when you're so good at stuff, it's like the power lines on the side of the highway that are making our lives possible, but you just stop seeing them after a while. They're so reliable that your eye stops processing their presence.
Then you feel let down, and then you act from that place, and people don't know. What are you talking about? Why are you acting this way?
Yes.
Because, they are not part of your plot.
Right. Whoa. Right. Mom's really right. Because you've asked for somebody to help you do something 8 times and nobody does it. And then you lose your stuff, you blow your top, and then, yeah, you're being irrational becomes the new storyline. Yeah.
This is a hard lesson for a lot of women, I think. And unlearning for me has been a big challenge. I'm still struggling with this, but like I pause before committing or helping. At least now I recognize that, wait, I'm not just going to be like, take this, I'll be there, I'll do that, I'll volunteer for everything. Now I pause before committing.
Yeah.
Before committing. and I ask myself, am I doing this out of kindness or it's still like that? If it's the old thing, like, no, I can't, sorry. It's hard, but it becomes easier with time.
I'm trying to get better at not stepping in the sort of group things. I'm thinking of one thing, one group text I'm existing on right now. Like, we should all get together. We should do something. I've been doing an experiment with this, not answering. And the person on the other end is very good at like giving work to other people. Like, are there nights that work for everyone? And that's when I would step in and be like, okay, I made a doodle, or like, how about just Saturday, whatever. I'll do the date, I'll pick the place because I'm tired of this group text being so inefficiently run when I can just, it'll take me 5 minutes and then I'll fix this problem. And this person is sort of expertly like, is anybody interested in maybe seeing each other sometime? What nights of the week might work for everyone? Like, what an open-ended, useless question. And I am watching it happen and not stepping in to fix it for everybody. Now, if it was, my best friend from college who's visiting from Australia for one day, yes, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to make sure that happens. But this is a group of people who are all sort of medium motivated to see one another. And even though it would be more efficient, even though it'll only take me a minute and I really don't mind, the phone's in my hand, I'm trying. This is the perfect opportunity for me to sit on my hands and watch what happens if I don't do anything.
Totally hear you. I'm the same way. I am the initiator, the organizer. And here is the thing, there's nothing wrong with being a helper, I learned. But, and I can do those things, I can organize, initiate. That gives me joy. Yes, even though I am still the over helper, but somebody has to initiate, somebody has to organize. And if I don't, then we won't get together and no one will enjoy this thing. So I think there are trade-offs. That's how I discern. There's nothing wrong for me to organize this, but if it's going to leave like a bad taste and I'm going to feel resentful, now I don't do it. But if everybody is going to enjoy, I don't mind being the helper in that situation instead of this like inefficient text messages that's going to drive me insane. So, but I end up being the default organizer for many things. So, but I think you can pick and choose where to help. I am trying this lesson too, and I think I'm in a good place now in my life. I am the helper when it also gives me joy. But if it's not going to bring me joy, that's where I'm like, no, I can't do this. Sorry, guys. I can't participate. I can't organize. I can't. So, I think there's nothing wrong with being the helper. It's like sort of our identity.
Right. And the world runs on it. The world runs on the people who help. Right.
Right. If we didn't help, like, who's going to help? then.
That's the truth. I mean, the whole like, relax, it'll all get done. It'll all work out somehow is usually said by the
Oh,
person
I
who's going to let you
hate
do
those
it.
statements.
Right.
Oh,
They're going to let
yes.
you do it. And part of rewriting this narrative in our lives is about accepting that, like, maybe it won't all work out okay. Maybe we won't ever have that dinner, or there won't be a Toys for Tots drive this year. Maybe nobody will step in if you stop doing the thing that gives you resentment instead of joy. But you don't have to wait. I think I have in the past waited for somebody to hand off the baton to. Like, I'll stop doing this as soon as somebody who's going to take it over and do it the same way I did it magically arrives. And sometimes you just have to put that baton down and walk away because you don't want to run anymore. And that's a weird feeling, but it isn't as simple as just let go, it'll all get done. Sometimes it doesn't.
No, sometimes it doesn't. And those like, oh, it will get done. Those kinds of people, like, no, somebody has to do it.
Right.
Like, it doesn't get done on its own, right? Yeah, I hate those kinds of statements. It's either I am doing it, you're doing it. It's like it gets done.
Right.
Like, what is that tense?
Right. 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 Exactly.
It's like it will get done.
Super
Who is
conditional.
gonna, yes, who is gonna get it done, right? That drives me insane. And sometimes my own husband says that. He's like, Anna, we should do X. I'm like, you mean Anna do X?
Somebody
Because
should. Right. Right.
somebody should do this or somebody should do this. I'm like, who?
Right, right. We should have dinner sometime. Right, right. These are all invitations to you to step in. And it can be very hard when you are the person who's just stepped in and spoken up, and this will only take a minute. to not respond because it's familiar. We all crave what's familiar, even if it's something we're trying to change about ourselves. But just sitting that out and waiting through the silence, like for me, the change came not from saying, from blowing up at people and saying, like, oh, I'm setting a boundary and, whatever, nobody would care if I did, but in just not saying anything and being silent and being willing to sit in that silence a little longer. That's where the change starts to occur.
Agreed. I agree. Yeah. You're doing this for yourself, not for other people. Both of the things. If you resign from helping or whatever, it's no, first of all, we said if you help, 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 no one notices it. Nobody appreciates it. When I left that board, people just said, "Thank you for your service." I'm like, "That's it? Like,
Right.
I need a recognition. I need a certificate.
Where's my
I
gold
did
watch?
this.
Yeah.
I did that." I was so hurt.
I
But
had the same exact experience. Like, you didn't see anything that I've done for the past X years. No, they didn't.
they didn't. And I'm like, I was replaceable. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would never, ever, ever do this again. Because yes, we do it, right? We do this. Are you familiar with the Cartman drama triangle?
No, I guess I
Oh,
should be. What is it?
so this reminds me of that. So Cartman is a psychologist, I think, or a social scientist. He is not alive, but he created this model of communication called, maybe you just don't know. It comes with different names. The inverted triangle, helper, persecutor, and rescuer, a victim, a rescuer, and the persecutor. So there are three roles in the Cartman model. It's an inverted triangle. I don't know if it's inverted is the right word, but the
Yeah, yeah.
sharp
The
edge
points at the
is
bottom. Yeah.
on the bottom. So the bottom one is the victim. The top one is the persecutor, and the other one is the rescuer. So rescuer and persecutor never interact. They never interchange their roles. However, persecutor and the victim can change their roles and interact, and rescuer and victim interact and change their roles. So sometimes people who are persecutors, they end up in a victim position too. Oh, poor me. Nah, 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 nah. And then when you accommodate them, they act and they're more aggressive. The helper and the victim is either I'm the victim or I'm the rescuer and the helper. So that's basically the model. And it's very, very helpful when you learn about the Cartman, the drama triangle.
Yes.
You see it everywhere.
Oh, I'm going to look into this. This is amazing because it makes sense to me. If you're the helper, you're being active, and being active feels good. Getting things done feels good. I'm a busy person, I'm a productive person, and I love all of that. So choosing not to be the helper is taking on this sort of passivity that feels unfamiliar to me.
Yes. And then, that's like the typical my neighbor's mom is constantly helping and doing and overdoing things. And then she's like, "You never value me. You never this." She's like, "Mom, I never asked you to." Then the mom plays, "No one values me." She plays the victim. Either she's the helper rescuer, and if she's not valued, she reverts to being the victim. So
Hmm.
it's a very interesting model, very simple, but I think it once you learn it and see it everywhere, you see it's hard to not unsee. And it's good to know who is who in any interaction.
I'm going to look that up.
Yes, look that up. This is juicy, 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 juicy topic. But let's go back to the kids. I think for parents, unless there's other things about helping others, being the overgiver. So what have you learned and what have you seen in your kids as a result of you know, taming your tendencies?
So, another place with kids that can feel less hypothetical and less optional is when our kids are literally suffering, when they have pain, when they have unexplained symptoms, when they have, long COVID, things like that can really be when our mama bear instincts kick in, and when we put on ourselves that we need to go to the ends of the earth, like that movie Lorenzo's Oil. Remember that old movie where Susan Sarandon, it's based on a true story about a kid. He was having seizures every day and nobody believed his mother. And then she figured out that he needed, I think, more olive oil in his diet. I'm totally making this up, but I believe it might have been the early like keto, that the keto diet helped with certain things like seizures. And so it lionized the idea of the mother who won't give up and who will go to the ends of the earth to save her child. And in my own life with my kids, I have had situations where they had something strange and unexplained going on, and they needed their mom to say, like, I won't give up. We're going to go to a specialist. We're going to keep trying. I'm not going to give up on this, and we're going to figure it out together. And it worked. And I've had other times in my life where it's like something's going on. We don't know what it is. I'm not going to accept we don't know what it is. We're going to go to another specialist. We're going to try another medication. We're going to do this and this and this. And it led in the end to uncertainty, nothing having changed. And maybe we shouldn't have done some of that stuff. Maybe we should have stopped looking and pushing sooner. And I wanted to include both of those things in the book because I didn't want it to be as simple as you fight for your kid and you don't give up on them and it always works out perfectly and you get the answer. Sometimes you're left with uncertainty. Sometimes you're left with, did I do too much? Did I push too hard? Even if it was out of love. And I wanted to sort of honor both of those realities because I think sometimes we always do our best and sometimes we still don't get it right. Sometimes we don't help our kids enough and we should have seen it sooner and we should have stepped in sooner. Other times our help became perhaps a hindrance and we couldn't see when that happened. And it's only in retrospect that you can see. And I think we can learn from those things, but I think we also, again, have to give ourselves a lot of compassion for those times because what we do is born out of love and wanting what's best. And maybe it's only in sort of facing the limitations of our abilities to fix things and being willing to accept a little more uncertainty is how we might be able to find that balance a little sooner.
Yeah, amen. I so agree with that. It reminds me of, I do have, in retrospect, regrets about COVID times, how I did or did not do certain things for my kid or with my kid. And it's like, I got to be kind to myself because at that time, I was somewhere too myself emotionally, mentally. Like right now, maybe I have a different insight. And if I was in that situation, I would have acted differently. But at that time, Anna was able to do just that. And so I think many of us need to be kind and compassionate towards ourselves for those past regrets or mistakes or the things we know today or we could have, should have done. You know, in that moment, this is what was available, what I was able to do. And, we can't torture ourselves with guilt, you know?
Could have been and should have done. And yes, there will always be things we could have done better or differently.
Yeah. And even with being perfect, let's say you are perfect, 30 years from now, your child is going to get up and say, Mom, why did you not divorce dad? Why didn't you do this? Mom, why did you put me in this school district and not school? Not, why didn't you help me choose a better college? You know what I mean? Like, there is always going to be something in the future that we don't know whether we did right or wrong. And so,
What do you take out of that? I think you just get out of it that, again, that willingness to exist in uncertainty, that not everything has to be solved for it to be okay. Not everything has to have a definitive answer. And we sit with each other through things that are hard, and we sit with our kids while they're going through tough things. And sometimes that is all we need to do.
yeah, agreed, agreed. Thank you so much. I mean, this was juicy. Amy, where can people find you?
Well, my book is called Happy to Help Adventures of a People Pleaser, and it's available wherever you buy books. And my podcast is called What Fresh Hell Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. You can find that wherever you're listening to this right now or at whatfreshhellpodcast.com.
Let me ask you something. You're choosing the word helper and not people pleaser. I mean, you're using both, but I've heard in the book and in this conversation, you're using the word helper.
Yes, but
Why?
not people pleaser.
Yeah.
People pleaser, to be honest, it doesn't appear anywhere in the book. It is on the cover because I think people pleaser is shorthand for somebody like this. Like you hear people pleaser, you see it on the cover, like, oh, I know people like this that are always doing for other people and they never do for themselves. But again, I feel like that's a little bit of another form of this advice of like, there you go, people pleasing again. It's a failing in yourself that needs to be addressed instead of perhaps a way that the systems that you exist within have perhaps taken slight advantage of your willingness to show up and do for other people. But you don't need to fix your people pleasing. You don't need to, stop maternal gatekeeping. You need to change the situations that you're in with love and patience and willingness to accept uncertainty.
Interesting. I like that. I'm going to sit with that. Earlier in the summer, I posted in my Facebook community one thing, and this is the last thing about people pleasing. One of my friends had made a comment. Oh, I didn't know you were a people pleaser also, Anne. I said, are you kidding me? I struggled with this all my life. And so that elicited this, conversation with different people. And what I walked away and I started using a different word, self-abandonment. Instead of people pleasing, I don't like people pleasing as an expression, because when you please others, you abandon yourself, right? It's an act of self-neglect, self-abandonment, because you're saying yes to someone when you're saying no to yourself, and vice versa. But what you're talking about is a little different. That helper, I'm sort of seeing it separate. The helper and the people pleaser, self-abandonment, is a separate thing, and the helper is a different thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think the people pleaser, perfectionist kind of things, those are terms that are more often applied to women because we more often put other people's wants and needs before our own, but we're told to do that. We're assigned to do that from very young ages, some of us. And it is something we need to unlearn for our own health, but it's not something we're making up in our heads. It is something that the systems around us very much expect of us day after day.
Yeah. Do you resonate with what I said about people pleasing and self-abandonment?
I like self-abandonment better also as, yeah, people pleaser is pejorative. And I always felt like, yeah, that's not it. That's not the thing that I was after was the gratification that would come with helping other people. I felt like I was, if anything, I was too proud of being the protagonist and the flag bearer, the lead character. And here I go helping people. It wasn't like, are you mad at me? I can't leave my house until you tell me you're not mad at me, which that part I'd never really identified with. So I never found it useful in terms of unlearning this.
Yes, and also people pleasing is kind of minimizes the role that the people pleasing entails. It's a lot deeper than just pleasing people. It's what we talked about, it's this overextension of yourself and helping and this and that. And,
if you're a people pleaser, I think this is the point. If you're a people pleaser, if you're saying you're overwhelmed and I say, like, there you go, people pleasing again, I have neatly put the entire situation back on you to fix. Nothing I have to think about. I don't have to do anything more or different. You just have to stop people pleasing all the time, it's just a very neat, pat solution that's not a solution, which doesn't help you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for engaging with me in this kind of banter. Amy, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Anna.
It was lovely meeting you, and I hope this won't be the last time.
For sure. We'd love to have you on Love Fresh Health sometime.
Yay!
Particularly when you have something you might want to, in particular, you want to promote or talk about or whatever. Just reach out to me.
Yes, thank you. I will.